Okay, guys, so welcome to the live platform. You can think of this as just a virtual trade show or in-person event. We have multiple different rooms set up here that you can move around in and see different people. But for today, we're mainly going to be here in the main course room, which is where Kitty is going to be telling us everything about getting your messages out across to maximize trade show communications. So you can see here, we're going to be in this main area in the main course. This is also where you will find reception and help. Later on, we're going to break out into these chef rooms where you can have one-on-one or group conversations to get a little more details on any marketing questions. And if you want to just network and hang out later, we have the cafe here for people who want to chat. You can also navigate by using the left-hand side. You just find the room you want to go into and you click on it. And before you jump, you'll get a notification asking if this is the transfer you really want to make. In this case, I want to stay where I am, so I'll hit cancel. And to get back to that main map view, I'll go up here, click map view, and I'm back to seeing all of the different rooms. On the left-hand side, you can also see who is in which room. So if you're looking to meet up with someone in particular, you can just find their name on the screen and jump wherever they are. Okay.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks for that. My mouth is watering already with that tour, so thank you. My name is Neil Howman. Welcome to this marketing kitchen, and I'm going to be your maitre d' for today. And I promise I'm going to ration these kitchen and food related puns as we go through, but I can't guarantee that there won't be a liberal sprinkling of them throughout. But welcome. Yes, the Marketing Kitchen's a new series of a variety of marketing tidbits, top tips, things to get you thinking about, especially as we're entering into trade show season. Plenty of them coming thick and fast. And each week we're going to get a cordon bleu level marketing expert on a particular topic to join us and share some advice, some of their experiences, and give you a couple of things to think about as you prepare for attending a trade show. And this week, we've got a very special guest. I'm going to introduce her in a minute because that is not all. After we've had our main course, speaking to our expert, we have a delicious dessert for you in that we have a brigade of marketing master chefs on hand to answer any of your marketing related questions. Doesn't have to be on the topic that we're going to be discussing with our expert. Can be anything, and more about who we've got later. But if they can't answer your question, they'll know someone who can. But anyway, on to today's subject. As Ashley said, we're going to be looking at messaging, and more specifically, your messaging before, during, and after trade shows, how you maximize your trade show investment. And I'd like to welcome into the Marketing Kitchen our special guest, Kitty Higinbotham, who is president of Wall Street Communications. Hi, Kitty.
Hi, Neil.
Well, welcome to the kitchen. What do you think?
It's stunning. I think.
Yeah, I thought I'd sort of underplay it a bit.
I think it's a nice change for you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think it goes with the personality quite well. So, as I said, Kitty is president of Wall Street Communications, but for many years, am I allowed to say that?
I think many is probably good. If
It's
you
a
know,
good-
you know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Kitty's been a writer, and I think it's fair enough to say that you have probably helped hundreds of companies, individuals, organizations with their messaging. Would that be a fair comment?
Fair.
Kitty?
That is fair. Yeah.
I haven't over egged that recipe.
No, it's actually true. That's real. Yeah.
Good. We like to tell the truth here. And just a couple of words about how this session is going to go. I'm going to be speaking with Kitty for about 15-20 minutes or so. And then Kitty is obviously going to be available throughout our conversation to respond to any questions that you may have. You can put them in the chat, or if I see you, might be able to ask you to unmute and ask Kitty in person. But the great thing about this wonderful live platform we're talking on today is the ability to freely associate. So Kitty's been very kind that after we've finished conversation, finished a few questions, she'll be sticking around and you can continue the conversation with Kitty if you wanted to go into a deeper dive into aspects of messaging, anything that we might have talked about. And as I said, we have our two marketing master chefs. We've got Chris Lacert and Karen Cohen, who are our dessert course. I hope you don't mind being described like that, who will be on hand to answer any marketing related questions you may have. It doesn't have to be on the topic that Kitty and I are discussing today, can be anything. And they will be going to our rather wonderfully dessert themed rooms afterwards. And I'll be able to tell you more about where they're going and where you can find them at the end of our conversation. So Kitty, let's get to it really. Specifically about trade shows is certainly the bigger ones, because of the sheer size of the halls. A lot of people are making their decisions about who to go and visit in advance of the show, and I would think that the correct sort of messaging is going to obviously play a big part in them their decision making about whether to go and see a company or not. I invited you to send me a few sort of key points that you'd like to discuss. And the first one, which I thought was really very interesting, was about messaging and awareness. Obviously, you've got companies spending huge amounts of time, money, resources, new products, new innovations, getting to a trade show, a booth, whatever. They obviously want to be able to then communicate that. I just wondered if you could share a few thoughts on what you mean by awareness and how messaging can help that, build that awareness.
Yeah, well, I think at this point, leading into a show with some time ahead of you, the most important thing is to get yourself on the map. So whether that's your company brand, setting the stage so people know you're going to be there, you're already familiar. And then getting you already need to get your messaging, figured out, and you need to know what you're planning to show so that you can go ahead and get people excited about seeing it. And I just did that earlier this week with a client where we laid it all out so that they have a clear plan going forward, and then they can be really strategic about building up toward the show.
Were they a client that you've worked with many times in the past, or are they an established client, or are they sort of?
They are an established client. Yeah. So we've got a nice pattern of, sometimes it seems a little early, sometimes in advance of a trade show, but we've got a nice pattern where we can, help them actually develop that messaging, along a time frame that's going to sort of be optimal leading into the show.
Yeah, and certainly with the bigger trade shows, there is a sort of a timeline, I suppose, over the years that you've developed with your colleagues and team at Wall Street.
Yeah, everybody here, sorry for interrupting. Yeah, everybody sort of understands what that flow is like. They know, what kind of information, should be released when, and sort of how to optimize that, both with like the trade press and also just with, the world at large perspective.
Sure. Well, we'll probably be coming to talk a bit more about the trade press. So it's a big title, isn't it? Dum dum dum. A little bit later, but I was just on this awareness. What if say I was a startup, or I hadn't worked with you before? I guess everything obviously starts with a conversation, but what sort of things from your perspective is going to be helping them fashion their messaging? What are the sort of things that you're interested in finding out?
It's a combination of things. I mean, some of it is just their brand identity and what they think differentiates them, from the competition, so they can start communicating that in a consistent way in all their messaging. And then it's, hopefully they're bringing something, to their next show that's going to solve somebody's problems, or, like what is their unique value proposition. So we want to get, sort of high level and, start working on the detail,
Sure.
what they can bring. Yeah. And how they can solve problems for people.
Great. Well, it's very interesting that your second area of things to think about with your messaging and that about building credibility, which a lot of the points obviously that you've come up with. The great thing about messaging and all these sort of marketing tips is that they're all going to be somewhat integrated and
Correct.
overlap and hopefully dovetail very nicely. But I've found that companies can do a great deal of work in their product innovation, and they kind of sort of stand back and admire their work and think it's going to sell itself, or people are going to just find out about it. But you mentioned how competitive the marketplace is, so building credibility is obviously a key thing about messaging, but I would think that that's quite a balancing act. What observations or advice would you give on credibility building?
Yeah, I think there are several different ways that businesses can go about it, depending on what they've achieved, what they've got at hand. So if they've maybe had some good partner announcements recently, they can leverage that to say, hey, we're a trusted partner for another great company. Case studies focusing on a recent deployment, to show that what they're doing is real, or that they're, a leader in, solving problems and, providing solutions, and that it's a real thing. That all builds credibility for a business.
If I came to you with the idea of a case study, I'd done a great project with a partner or customer and really helped them solve the problem. But I wanted to be a bit gung ho on the salesy aspect. I mean, I think you would in your messaging conversations would probably want to give them the benefit of your years of experience about what plays well or what people actually want to hear. Yeah.
That's a good point, and I like how you put it. I mean, it is.
I'm being diplomatic there, aren't I?
Yeah, I think.
Tell me if I'm.
I mean, hopefully, now I'm trying to be diplomatic in return, Neil. Yeah, I think you need to let things speak for them. We encourage the clients to let things speak for themselves a little bit, and really try to put themselves in the position of their customers and what they need to see and hear, to think, hey, this could be the solution I've been looking for, or this could make my life easier. So, I mean, the sales will, that piece comes, but it's the temptation that, you just sort of back off a little bit.
Very, very diplomatically done. So, like, what, 60% writer and 40% diplomat? Would you?
Well, yes. I'll just say yes. I think that's.
Just say yes. Very diplomatic. Yes. Right. We'll move on to the traffic question, and obviously in your sort of headline, it was about using messaging to drive traffic. But I think this is possibly a slightly more nuanced point, or maybe we could pull out the sort of nuance there, because surely, if I want traffic to my booth at a trade show, but surely it's really attracting the right profile of visitor, isn't it? So maybe again, just some thoughts or some advice, or I suppose you've really got to have a clear idea about your customer or your target customer. Is that?
You do, yeah, you do, because what you want to be able to do, I mean, you've laid, so far as we've been talking, you've been laying the foundation. Hopefully they kind of know about you, in a general way. But then it's sort of a matter of letting them know that, like, that the booth is going to give them sort of a can't miss opportunity to see something that could, change their world. So that could be, letting them know about new, the chance to see firsthand, and maybe even get a demo, a one-on-one walkthrough of something that's, the latest and greatest, and then they know it's real, but and they get the first look at it. If you have other events going on in your booth, clearly you want to sort of promote those. Yeah, it's sort of getting that combination of, you want to build on everything you already did before, but then you want to remind them of like those unique pieces that you bring, and that the trade show gives them a special opportunity to see.
I suppose if you're going to be doing something on booth, or you have an off booth event like a press conference, I guess with everything it's all about the early planning. So I guess in your early messaging and planning meetings, you're thinking, well, if you want members of the trade press or specific cohort of people to come to your booth at a particular time, you've really got to get in there early and be very clear about your
Yeah.
objectives.
Yeah, and often it involves planning something that might take some time. Like if you are able to bring a partner on your booth to do,
Yeah,
to show how they used your solutions to do something amazing, or, for the first time. I mean, that's a great draw. But that, of course, like you say, takes advanced planning to line
yeah,
up. So you, like right now, as you think about, some of your other messaging, like getting those things lined up so that when the time comes, you can promote it and encourage
yeah.
people to join.
Well, I think that point leads very nicely onto this word maximize. Now, we all want to maximize. A lot of companies out there who are going to trade shows, they're forking out. That's quite kitchen related, isn't it? Forking out, yeah. Forking out a lot of money to actually be there, to make a buzz about their products and their solutions, but they really, obviously the trade media is still a great way of amplifying
Right.
what they're doing, what they're talking about. So I mean, let's focus more on what they can do to maximize their sort of press coverage for their announcements. What sort of tips or things have you found in your experience have really helped a company generate that engagement with the trade media?
Well, I think that once, you again, planning in advance helps to, bring those people onto your booth, and, helping them understand what they're going to see ahead of time is helpful. But then once they're there, having information that they can just take and run with, setting up interviews, with key people who are already primed on the
Yeah,
messaging, all those announcements that came before the show, those talking points should be lined up. You should have content that they can just put into an article, overnight for, one of the publications at the show. So you want to give them access to people who can speak to them about, what your business is doing, your products, but also the industry and where it's going. So you want to give them that access to, your
yeah.
thought leaders too.
Do you, I presume over the years you've got quite a bit of feedback, obviously, from the editors and the analysts and the key journalists about the points that they are most interested in.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can share there? Obviously, they want something that's new always,
I
but
like new, yeah, and if you're working with, well, any sort of business deals or partnerships that you've done lately that you can speak in more,
yeah,
detail about, that's always of a lot of interest. Those tend to be any kind of innovations or,
yeah.
recent projects completed. The more you can speak to that, and let them sort of break that news to the rest of the world, the more interested I think
I
they
guess
are.
we come back to the real world in use stories, user stories, case study, which are
Yeah.
obviously can be quite difficult sometimes to come by because of not wanting to mention, various things. But there are ways around that, right? Am I?
Are, yeah. And they have, as journalists, they have some freedom that, you don't have, sometimes in sharing your own message about your involvement in, a high profile sports event taking place, later
Yeah.
this year kind of thing. Yeah.
Interesting. As I said, Kitty is available for any questions either at the end, or she can be contacted after this, because many people will see this video recording and think, I must speak to Kitty Higinbotham and Wall Street Communications about this messaging question that they didn't cover in their brief chat. So I'm sure they'll follow up. The final point that you identified, I thought this was really interesting, really, really interesting, is that so much effort goes into the preparation for trade shows, and obviously, you know, people are running at 100 miles an hour during. But afterwards, there is that bit of, you know, completely understandably, people are exhausted and they've got leads to follow up on. By the way, with leads, we've got, we may well have a marketing kitchen focusing on what to do with leads coming up. So watch this space. Let's get back to messaging. Let's stay on message, shall we? But maintaining that momentum after a trade show is something I think that is really, really important. Have you got any tips about how a company can build on what they've done at a trade show and keep that going in their messaging?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you know, you've been doing things like posting on social during the show. And again, that's something you would have planned as much as possible in advance. So, you know, as the show wraps up, you know, one thing that can be really valuable is all the feedback you got from customers, you know, from editors or journalists who visited your booth. You kind of learn a little bit about what interests, you know, what captured their interest, you know, what requirements, you know, on the customer side they might have that you weren't aware of. And you can then take a look back at the show and integrate sort of those findings into your messaging, and then also maybe speak to things you learned about the industry as a whole, and use it as a thought leadership opportunity. So maybe it's a blog post, you know, on your way home. We had one client who likes to, you know, write a post, you know, basically on the airplane, you know, home from
Yeah.
a trade show. And, you know, and then you can also, of course, throw in, you know, pictures from your booth, which is always very popular, but also to showcase like, hey, we had successes, you know, here's a partner on our booth, or here's an award we won, you know, and you sort of showcase those successes, but then you're also paving the way, you know, building on everything you've done to move toward the next big event, which is going to be like right around the corner.
Yeah, certainly at the moment.
Yeah.
They're coming thick and fast, aren't they? I
Yeah.
think that was really interesting, that the whole messaging thing is not just you know, written content, is it? You were touching on the fact that it's mixing the images, actually mixing sort of slightly lighter stories to back up the main direction of travel of a company, the philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I mean, and it is, I mean, people, the connections you make with people, I think that there's something about that that really resonates. So it may not be, you know, oh, you're not talking about your product, or you're not really selling, but you are reinforcing the fact that, hey, we met, like we're we're friends now, or, you know, and sort of
Yes,
you can carry that forward. And it
I
tends to,
think that, yeah.
it tends to get quite a bit of attention too. And, you know, you can't overlook that.
Yeah, they really do. And I think that's a really important point. I've got a question for you from Sunny. Thank you, Sunny. Can you expand on what the talking points you referred to? I think we're going back, because I've only just got the question now.
Sunny herself, an expert.
What they should be. Maybe if you could expand a bit on what you mean by talking points, what are good examples of talking points?
Yeah, so it depends on who, you know, who's doing the talking. If you have somebody who speaks to product, you know, say on your booth, you know, that's going to be, you know, more benefits focused. But if you have, you know, some, you know, an executive who's there to talk, you know, bigger picture, then you want them to have, you know, news, all the latest news about the business, you know, any recent transactions that have happened, anything that they can talk about that's on the horizon, any new announcements. And then be prepared to talk about, you know, oftentimes they'll be tapped for their perspective on larger issues across the industry, not necessarily specific to the business. So then it's sort of good for them to be prepared to speak to what trends do you see in the industry? You know, where do you think, you know, things are going? So it depends on who's speaking, but for somebody, you know, sort of high level representative of the company, you know, you want sort of that core messaging, but then like the thought leadership element as well.
Absolutely. And again, I think that thought leadership really ties back to the whole credibility aspect we were talking about earlier.
I have a question on
Questions, Chris.
related to thought leadership. So how hard is it to get customers to cooperate on case studies? I mean, is it easy, or is it?
It's not necessarily easy, though it can be done several ways. So we find that, you know, sometimes when we don't expect it, a customer will get permission to mention sort of a major broadcast or network, what have you, event. And that's fantastic. And they can make they can and should make the most of that. Other times they will do sort of generic case studies that speak more to a use case. So you're still demonstrating that you have solved you've solved a problem for somebody, you worked with a certain kind of client, and you can detail the solution, how it works, that it works and that it's real. So sometimes you have to sort of be flexible with what you with your take advantage of whatever you can.
Well, picking up on that flexibility question there, what's the value of when you are talking about a case study but can't mention by name the partner
Right.
or customer? I mean, I know there are tricks to the trade, but what does that still have value in your opinion on a messaging?
I think it does. Yeah, I think it's a nice way to showcase how your solutions work, in a real world environment. So maybe somebody's already sort of on board. They're like, oh, we know about you. We feel good about you as a company. And then they see, oh, like this is how somebody else is using it, successfully. So it gives people confidence. So they don't necessarily need to know that it's for, the Olympics or,
Yeah, sure.
other things I won't even mention here. But yeah, so it can still be a confidence builder in that sense, and an educational tool too.
Great. No, I think that's really good. Well, we've come to the end of like the formals, but keep the questions coming. Kitty, you've very kindly agreed to stick around for a little bit. So if anybody's got any more messaging specific questions, Kitty will be here for a few minutes. And in a few moments, I'm going to ask you to move into the lounge where dessert will be served, and we'll turn the recording off. And Chris Lasert and Karen Cohen will be on hand to answer any of your marketing related questions. You can ask them anything, as long as it's marketing, by the way. So while we're still recording, Kitty, thank you so much for giving up your precious and valuable time to join us in the Marketing Kitchen. And thank you to the wonderful live team brought to you by Lake Shadow Media. Thank you, Ashley, in particular. And join us next week when we're going to return to the Marketing Kitchen and talk of all things social media strategy. So we'll be welcoming in another gastronaut expert in to answer any of your social media, especially around trade shows, again, marketing questions. And we will have a couple more cordon bleu gourmand marketing experts to answer any question you like. So until next time, we'll see you in the Marketing Kitchen next week. Thanks very much.